The Cole Palmer show continues. Palmer showcases again why we are actually witnessing Chelsea's best player. This is a player who actually made history yesterday by scoring 4 goals in one half, indicating that Chelsea are actually having one of the best players in the world. Now, in our video today, we're going to focus on the game that Chelsea played against Brighton, and we're going to try and analyze how Chelsea looked to play against Brighton and the tactical changes that Enzo Maresca put in this game. So, looking at Chelsea replicated a performance that they actually had when they played Tottenham. And this is when Tottenham decided to play with an aggressive high line at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and Chelsea actually knew how to play through this. I think these are one of the principles that Mauricio Pochettino had left at Chelsea. Now, Brighton had come to Chelsea to press them aggressively high and press them with an aggressively high line. Now, this is where the problem started for Brighton, because Brighton cannot afford to play that high line when they are actually playing with slow centre-backs. This is because Chelsea have very fast and lethal attackers such as Jackson, Palmer, Noni Madueke, and Jadon Sancho. Another thing that we saw in this game was Enzo Maresca's ability to actually adapt to the opponent. A lot of us, we've been doing analysis on Maresca, and there's a lot of speculations that have been thrown about of how Maresca is dogmatic, he's Pep Guardiola copy, he just wants to possess the ball, he wants to control the ball with the ball. No, we are seeing a new dimension of Enzo Maresca where he's not just looking to dominate possession, but rather looking to even try and control the game without the ball. And this is actually making Chelsea difficult to break down and lethal in transition. Before we begin, we continue our analysis. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. A lot of you are watching this video without subscribing to this channel. Subscribe so that we can grow our audience. Now, Chelsea were looking to press Brighton initially aggressively high. And as I did in my preview, I explained how Brighton are actually looking to create problems for Chelsea when they draw them to a press. And Chelsea found out why, because even Maresca in his post-match thoughts talked about how they were unable to cope up with Brighton playing through them. So Chelsea were trying to press with a 4-1-3-2 structure, with Fernandes being the one to pick the pivot, while Palmer joining Jackson in pressing the goalkeeper and the 2 centre-backs. Now, the way Brighton actually set themselves up is they created a situation where they would actually push many players forward and try to catch Chelsea's backline off guard. You can see here, Brighton are trying to play from the back. The goalkeeper is standing on the ball and is actually looking to try and start the game. Chelsea are looking to press with Palmer and Jackson. Enzo is pushing to try and limit the ball from reaching the pivots, while the wingers are starting quite narrow. The reason why the wingers are starting quite narrow is that their task generally is to try and pick the fullbacks. So whenever the ball will be shafted across to the fullbacks, the wingers will immediately automatically switch and press the fullbacks, denying them any space and time on the ball. Looking at this structure, you can see now that Brighton have changed the idea. The centre-backs are splitting so wide that Palmer and Jackson cannot cover them. And now, even if Jackson is trying to press the goalkeeper has a lot of options because his team is actually stretching the pitch, making it difficult for Chelsea to press. Also to note, a point to note is that this having players in these distances actually even was sometimes creating problems for Brighton, because if Chelsea could intercept that pass, then automatically they would have a run in goal, and we saw it time and time again because those spaces were so wide. Now, Hadzler, as usual, instructed his fullbacks to play as wingbacks, pushing them aggressively high up the pitch. And this is because he wanted to create that numerical overload in the wide areas, as well as to take out Chelsea's attackers out of the game. So he decided to push his wingers so high and wide so that he could actually form a 2-1-4-3 structure, meaning that the wingbacks would actually join the attacking midfielders to create another line in behind. and this will force Chelsea's wingers to drop deep. Look at this scenario here. You can see the goalkeeper, the center backs, one pivot and another pivot dropping deep. But look at the position. You cannot even see Brighton's fullback in this situation. This is because those fullbacks have been pushed aggressively high to a point where Chelsea can act. Mitoma had that space to actually make runs behind Malo Gusto, and this really created problems for Chelsea in their initial phases of play. Now, because of these runs that were being made by the fullbacks, sometimes we started to see Chelsea creating pressing traps, with Caicedo being the one to shift across and actually intercept the ball. And through this instance, Chelsea actually even found themselves in situations where they were able to win the ball and immediately transition. You can see here Chelsea have won the ball. Caicedo is playing the ball onto Noni Madueke. Palma is making that run in the half space. Jackson is looking to make that darting run on the other side. And now Brighton are actually being caught unaware. Now the ball was, Noni Madueke played a poor ball to Cole Palmer, and the defender managed to intercept. Otherwise, if Palmer will receive this ball, he will just slip the ball onto Jackson, and Jackson would have had an easy finish in front of goal. Now, because you can see Chelsea being able to actually intercept these passes and create problems for Brighton, you automatically realize that though Brighton were looking to play through Chelsea, Chelsea were able to set pressing traps because of their structure of play. Now, one area that Brighton had a lot of strength in is playing those balls over the top, especially towards their midfielders. Chelsea were not pressing with an aggressive high line as Brighton, and because they were not doing that, and Chelsea were looking to sit in a mid block, so the backline had to drop deep to try and cover the pace of Mitoma, and Brighton attempted to play those balls over the top. But credit must go to Levi Colwill, because he knew how to step out and win those duels against Danny Welbeck, because Welbeck was actually creating problems, because he would win the first ball and then have his team win the second ball and actually transition. You can see here, look at Chelsea's 4-4-2, look at the gap between the defense line and the midfield line. And Brighton are actually positioning their dangerous players in between the midfield and the defense line, ready to receive the ball and actually run at Chelsea's backline. Brighton are able to play that ball, and look now, Brighton the midfielder is able to receive the ball, pass the ball to Mitoma. Mitoma drags Gusto out of position, and now Brighton are actually running at Chelsea's defense. Chelsea's attack and midfield line have been taken out. Again, look at this position. Now Chelsea decide to play again like this. They are pressing. Fernandes has actually Palma and Madueke are looking to press, but you can see Brighton understand that if they manage to play a simple ball in midfield, they will be able to break those lines. And one thing that we saw with Brighton is that even though they attempted to play those passes in between the lines, sometimes Chelsea will intercept them and actually win that ball and immediately look to transition. You can see here, Brighton again are having the ball. Look at the space between Chelsea's defense and midfield line. Sancho, who was tracking the fullback, has actually dropped in that backline, and now Cucurella, who was tracking the winger, is now forced to leave the defense line to try and cover the winger. Look at the space that has actually opened between Levi Colwill and Jadon Sancho, and now Cucurella must stop that ball from being played in behind or from a player looking to make that run, and this is how Brighton was creating problems for Chelsea. But because Cucurella was able to stand his ground and actually look to deny this player to pass the ball, Brighton decided to go back. But you could see the intention there was to actually exploit that space. In some instances, Brighton will actually look to play the ball in field, and because Chelsea's backline will now have compressed, the quick switches of play we started to see, and that's why throughout the first half we started to see Mitoma receiving the ball in very dangerous situations. And once Mitoma will receive this ball in these dangerous situations, he will not have the time and space to move in field, while Estupiñán will also look to try and make that overlapping run. And this was courtesy because of Chelsea's structure. Chelsea's midline and the defense line was not quite compact. If they were supposed to play with a mid block, then the defense line should have also looked to push high up, but they didn't. But you can see the overall situation of the game is that Brighton were trying to pick these players in between the line. Sometimes these overloads were creating problems for Chelsea that actually made Chelsea to drop both Noni Madueke and Sancho in their defense line. The problem is that when Brighton centre-backs were looking to attempt these ambitious passes, Chelsea's defenders would win this ball, and because Brighton had committed a lot of players in the attacking areas of the pitch, Chelsea could receive this ball and immediately look to play quick 1-2s and actually transition from defense to attack. Another Achilles heel that Brighton had was when Chelsea had possession. Brighton were trying to play with an aggressively high line. They were trying to suffocate Chelsea in a 4-1 structure, pressing them aggressively and also having their defense line play aggressively high. Now, you can see here Sanchez is attempting to play the ball. Welbeck is already ready to spring out to him. The wingers are ready to spring out to the centre backs, while the midfielders are looking to cover any midfield passing option that Chelsea have. Now, the problem with this man-marking approach system is that if one player is beaten, then Chelsea will have space to actually progress with the ball. But sometimes, even so, Chelsea concede a goal through these kinds of instances because Brighton's press was quite aggressive and they committed a lot of players in that press. Now, because Brighton were looking to try and commit a lot of players into that press, they will create some pressing traps in midfield by either allowing Caicedo to receive the ball. But Caicedo was giving Sanchez some good angles where Sanchez could actually play the ball to him. But Sanchez made a clumsy pass that actually saw Brighton score a goal. Now, Palmer in his press conference said that Maresca had noted that Brighton looked to play with an aggressively high line. And because of that issue, he realized that he could look to play his players such as Noni Madueke and Jackson in behind. And we actually saw a goal disallowed for Noni Madueke for making that run and Jackson having some opportunities to play those balls in behind. So whenever Palmer or Fernandes will receive the ball, their first instinct was to have those players making runs and immediately look to play those balls in behind. And this created problems for Brighton because Brighton actually conceded 3 chances in this kind of approach. And even in the second half, Chelsea were unable to capitalize on this. Now, another thing we need to understand is that when Chelsea had the ball, they moved into the kite with Gusto joining Palmer, joining Fernandes in those half-space regions, while Sancho and Noni Madueke would hold the width. Now, in this kind of structure, you do understand that Palmer had the freedom because he was playing the number 10 and he could move all over the pitch. Now, Chelsea have managed to have their first win in the Premier League and it has come quite late. And Chelsea are currently sitting 4th at the table, awaiting for the game that the game that Aston Villa is supposed to play with Ipswich. And Chelsea will be looking to try at least and maintain their position and maintain the momentum on top of the table. And this will actually give Chelsea an opportunity to go and reflect and try and tighten up areas in defense. Chelsea and Enzo Maresca have shown they have another dimension in the game. As I said, Maresca is not a photocopy of Pep Guardiola. I believe that Enzo Maresca is moving into the Mikel Arteta direction. And I explained this even in my post-match live stream that Enzo Maresca is moving towards a more pragmatic approach, meaning that he's approaching the game by game rather than trying to just instill a way of play. He understands that for him to succeed in the long term, he also needs to win in the short term. So when he says that players are not quite ready in that possession heavy kind of football, he sets the team out to actually get a victory. Something that Thomas Tuchel will do effectively for Chelsea. So what do you think about Chelsea's performance against Brighton? What do you think Chelsea are going to do in their remaining 2 games, and what are your predictions for the next games? If you've enjoyed this video, do not forget to like, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching and see you again.